In its time, the Khmer Empire was the largest in the world, spanning into modern-day Thailand, Laos, Cambodia and Vietnam. The name of its capital, Angkor, was derived from the Sanskrit Nagara, meaning city, and was by far the largest city in the world at the time, and is still home to the temple complex of Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument in the world, measuring over 500 hectares. Built by King Suryavarman II in the early 12th century between 1113 and 1150. Angkor Wat is a small part of a huge temple complex, consisting of hundreds of other temples. It was important that the temple was finished before the king's death, or else the portal would fail to propel him into the afterlife with the gods. Because of the strict time limit, construction only lasted 37 years before being declared finished, and was an incredible feat accomplished by the Khmer people.
Angkor Wat was originally built to be dedicated to the Khmer king as his state temple, as well as his tomb and burial place. It was later converted by the kingdom's people to worship the Hindu god Vishnu. However, this changed again in the 14th century, as all the Khmer temples were converted to worship the Buddhist religion. Statues of Buddhas were added that still stand today.
Today, the legend of Angkor Wat lives on in Cambodia as a huge part of their culture and industry. The temple is depicted on their national flag, making Cambodia the only country to have a building incorporated into its design. Angkor Wat is one of the most popular tourist attractions in the world, making over 50 million a year, proving to be a vital asset to Cambodia's economy. But how did the Khmer people build such an impressive temple with such little time?
When Suryavarman II was just 14, he knew he was destined to become king, so he gathered a small army to help him ambush his uncle, the king. After successfully killing him, he crowned himself the new king of the Khmer Empire, marrying Princess Suryavarna of the Champa. He was extremely strong, powerful, intelligent, and a skilled fighter, unlike any other human. For King Suryavarman II was a god. Immediately after seizing the throne, he knew he needed to consolidate his hold on the empire, and because he had seized the throne through murder, he knew he would still be vulnerable to being overthrown, so he decided to establish his position as a god king in the eyes of his people.
In order to unify his people, he gave them the ultimate project, to build Angkor Wat. The temple would be dedicated to Vishnu, the god of creation and destruction in Hinduism. But because he wanted the temple to be his burial place, so he could be transported into the afterlife, there was an extreme urgency to finish the temple, so the slaves were forced to work in harsh and inhumane conditions. Before they could begin construction, slaves were forced to clear over 500 acres of forest and trees to make room for the temple.
The slaves would have only been able to use machetes and axes, as well as having to work all day in Cambodia's intense heat. The structure required over 300,000 slaves to gather sandstone from the Holy Mountain, more than 50 kilometers away, and float them down the Siam Reap River on rafts to easily transport them to the building site. Inside the temple, there are hundreds of carvings known as bas-reliefs, many of which are resembling King Suryavarman II, as well as numerous other battle scenes.
To build such a huge temple like Angkor Wat required thousands and thousands of slaves, which meant that housing and feeding such a large population, all living relatively close to the temple, provided to be difficult. In Cambodia, there are two main seasons, wet and dry, each lasting 6 months of the year. During the wet season, 88% of the year's rainfall would occur, so it was important to store the water for use in the dry season. But the Khmer people had already mastered the use of water. They constructed two large man-made lakes, the East and West Baray, to store water from the monsoon season to be used in the dry season. This allowed them to triple the amount of harvest each year and made feeding nearly 1 million people fairly easy. During the Khmer Empire, their main food source was rice, and fish was easily caught.
For a civilization so large and so powerful, what was it that caused its sudden decline? What forced everyone to leave Angkor? Perhaps it was invading enemies who conquered the empire. Or was it due to political disputes that led to the empire's fall? Could it have been a punishment from the gods? Only recently, tests have found the answer to this age-old question, and have found that by looking at the rings of tree trunks that were alive during the time when the empire fell, they could see certain weather patterns occurring. They were able to see that in wetter years, the rings would be much thicker, and in dry years, the rings would be thinner. The scientists found that all the trees in the Angkor region appeared to have many thin rings, which would have been from the 17th century, which indicated the time with little water, followed by many thick rings indicating time with lots of water. This proves the theory that it was in fact a drought spanning decades, followed by many years of intense monsoons, which led to the flooding of the city, which would have caused severe damage to the infrastructure and irrigation systems. Because Angkor had relied so heavily on their ability to store water in the Tonle Sap and the East and West Baray to keep their crops watered, the large civilization was unable to support such a large population without enough harvested crops, forcing people to flee. For an empire who mastered the use of water to perfection, who built structures to allow them to store massive amounts of water during the dry season, it is rather ironic that it is water, one of their greatest strengths as a society, was able to destroy the Khmer's empire food supply and bring the empire to an end.
Although the tourist industry is the greatest form of income for Cambodia, it has recently caused a variety of negative social, cultural and environmental impacts on Angkor Wat today. Environmentally, Cambodia is suffering from issues such as air pollution, water pollution with sewage, increasing flooding and the selling of sacred land to developers as a result of its careless visitors. Social-culturally, tourists have severely negatively affected the lives of local Cambodians. These areas include an electricity shortage, increased traffic and noise, and food insufficiency. These factors have sparked the current debate among tourists as to whether the ancient system of temples is in fact worth the visit. Angkor Wat's fame and popularity has had a severe impact on the livelihood of the local Cambodians and the structure itself. Each day there are thousands of tourists who touch the temple, with so many people feeling the surface of the carvings, leaning on walls and walking inside. It has become very costly to maintain and stop from eroding, so it is common for scaffolding and other buildings to be put in place to keep parts of the temple complex standing. Despite these challenges, thousands of visitors still pack to Angkor Wat, proving that they will forever be an unstoppable force in history.